The following program contains views that are not those of WVTC, iNetworks Communications, their subsidiaries, affiliates, or financial supporters.
Winning victory through Christ, WVTC Allsip Chicago, and iNetworks Communication Station.
Good afternoon. Welcome to WVTC Radio. That's Winning Victory Through Christ. I hope everybody out there is feeling good today, looking good today, and thinking good today, because today is a good day that was given to us. Today, we have a very special guest on the Barge show, and her name is Sajdah Wendy Muhammad. Sajdah Wendy Muhammad. I like it's kind of like got a rhythm to it. And I'm going to just cut my time absolutely short so we can get into her, because she's very exciting. It's going to be a very fulfilling hour that we have, and very, very informative today. Sajdah, how are you?
I'm wonderful. Is Barge like the Barges?
Kind of like it.
Kind of like that.
But leave out the E. Just put Barge.
You sing in that falsetto type of voice.
Love me in a special way. No, I don't sing at all.
Oh.
But if you have a request, and I do take my tip jar is over here. So
I was just wondering what said Barges.
Wendy Muhammad, many people may know her, Sajdah. It's been, I want to say, since 1997, 1998, since we've been this close.
Mm.
And I had the blessed privilege of having her in my home. I lived downtown. It's been a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always admired her for her business skills and for her accomplishments in life up to that time, but a lot has happened since then. And I've just recently come to know, after seeing you on television about two and a half months ago.
Okay. What'd you see now?
I saw you on, what's the young lady's name? She used to have a radio show. I can't even think of her name.
Mm, okay.
It was a Sunday morning. That should
Okay.
give you a hint. It was at 10 o'clock on a Sunday morning.
Hermine Hartman?
Hermine Hartman.
Yeah.
She's done so much.
She's
She's a great
amazing.
person. But I just happened to turn the TV on, and I was only going to watch for a second before I took off. I wound up being late to where I was going because I saw you.
Oh.
So it's your fault.
Okay.
And that's okay,
Okay.
because I said I want to get in touch with her immediately, and I tried to get in touch with you, and I did.
Good.
And when I did,
Thank you.
I'm so happy that you took the time and made the sacrifice to be with us today.
I'm
But I
happy to
saw
be
you.
on the Winning Victory Through
Christ.
Christ show. I love that.
And guess what? God made us all winners, because I don't know if I told you, but this station, WVTC Radio, just won the Stella Awards.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And it's all because of the vision of our president, Franklin Morris,
Yes.
and the prayers that he's had
Yes.
for 5 years. 2 years ago, he said that the Lord told him that he was going to win a Stella.
Mm.
And he didn't question it. He just let it go. And
Mm-hmm.
here we are.
Yeah.
And I get an opportunity to be on the boat and share in that victory.
Yeah.
And it's not going away. There's no second or third place.
Well, he's in the right lane. He's following Christ.
There you go. So let's get started by bringing our listening audience into a viewpoint of you as a little girl growing up where you grew up. I don't even know where that was.
Yeah.
Talk
So
about that.
I'm a Midwestern girl. So I grew up in Nebraska. Grew up with what we would call back then like upper middle class parents. My dad played basketball, had a lot of notoriety. He and my mom were that basketball couple. So I grew up around, we had horse breeding businesses and all kind of things that my family did. And I was what they would have called a gifted child. They probably would have stuck me in some kind of autism type of thing, because I just had that thing about me. At 4, I started reading, and nobody knew how I started reading. And so there's debates in my family about who discovered it first. And then I just matriculated through school. I went to a lot of different schools because my mother and father were always trying to address my gift of blessed intellect. And so probably by the time I got to high school, I think I was in about 8 or 9 schools leading up to that. And then after school, I went to Iowa State University, started out majoring in computer engineering, which I hated every minute of it because my counselor said to me, you should go into engineering because your math and science scores are good. I wanted to be a business person since I was a little girl. I wanted to be a business mogul. And so I went against that because engineering sounded good. And I did pretty good. And once I got on a internship, I was like, I don't like this. And when I got back to school, I changed my major and got started in finance and accounting, and worked in that field for a little while, only really for about a year after I graduated from college. Became a registered member of the Nation of Islam, moved to Chicago, started working at the National Center and very closely with the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, which is where you met me. And then after that, I went back into the consulting world, and things just kind of took off. I call that my Hagar years because I say Allah drugged me around the world, and it was a very emotional period because I wanted to go back home. I just wanted to be back home in Chicago, with some little children with headpieces, and that's what I really wanted. But it didn't happen like that for me, and I also felt guilty. And the reason why I say it was emotional is because I couldn't look God in the face and feel bad for the blessings that He was giving me. He was sitting me at tables that I didn't know even existed. And, and this went on for quite a while. And over time, the way I got through it, I started to pull on what I call my Jesus within. Because after having had the opportunity to be up and around the minister and in that environment, I know what he feels like spiritually. And so those nights when I might be in Africa or on some project and who knows where up in Maine, and instead of crying, I would just pull on his spirit and just think about, and I would say to myself, what would it feel like if you were talking to the minister right now? And what would it feel like if you knew he was right down the street? And so it was that energy that I just kept nursing and calling on. And after I went through that period, then I started doing work for myself. So I started my own consulting firm. Through those consulting projects, I met my business partner, which our partnership is what kind of thrust me back into the public eye, because he's a surgeon, and together we built a micro hospital in Maryland. So
You built a what?
a micro hospital in Maryland. So we set up the clinics, we did the ambulatory surgery center, we did the freestanding surgery center, and then we did the micro hospital. And the interesting thing was that we were so busy, and he was busy doing surgery. I ended up as the lead developer, builder, and designer, and then I was a minority partner in the company. And so that thrust me into the healthcare and wellness field. And then people started to pay attention and take notice. And then shortly after that, not shortly, but about 12 years later, now 3-4 years ago, is when I then got into urban historic preservation with the renovation and restoration of the home of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. So now I'm still a consultant, still a business developer, real estate developer. In the midst of all of that, while I was traveling, one of the things I did was I started a brand called The Mind of an Entrepreneur. And I created a podcast, and I was on syndicated radio in DC. And now we're moving into a television series and the development of the Black Muslim Business Directory. So those tracks, 2 tracks primarily, or one, really it's 1 track, he had me on for a number of years. And I say he, meaning Almighty God, Allah.
You covered a lot of territory in such a short period of time, but you didn't leave us here with no more to talk about. You just traveled really fast and effectively.
Took you around the world.
You did.
Okay.
I went to Africa and a lot of other
Went
places,
to
I'm
Africa
sure.
and Asia and a bunch of other places. Yeah.
Where do you find your greatest joy from the center in terms of how you express it and what you do?
For me, most recently, I have learned and begun to practice being me. Prior to that, there was corporate Wendy, there was spiritual Wendy, there was, all the different categories that we have. And I found that that was a very schizophrenic way of approaching life. And so I asked Allah, I said, I want to sustain myself being who you decided you wanted to be. And you make the decision to bring me into this world. So let me be your conduit. And I was blessed just 2 years ago when the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan named me Sajdah. And I then felt like, you know what? I'm just going to be me. And so I get the greatest joy out of being able to honor God's flow through me and just settling in and just being. I spent so many years, Brother Donald, on the road in this company and that company and figuring out this corporate culture. And I built almost $250 million of businesses for somebody else. And one day I said, what are you doing? You do this for yourself. But there was the journey, right? Because it's always sometimes when you grow up like I did in that Midwestern environment, in the Midwest, I call them geek making machines because they prepare us to pretty much go into the corporate world. So if you look at most of your major companies, the engineers and the business people come from Purdue, IU, Iowa State, Kansas. When you get around on the coast, those are different types of levels of development, but we're built to be that internal person, to be those good executives. And so I've been trained for that all my life. So I had to really pull out of that who I was. And there was a point in time in there where it was really uncomfortable because I started seeing like, man, I could really be successful. And then Allah allowed me to see that the development of the hospital systems and the wellness companies and some of the international work I then began to do as a consultant.
Can I ask you, and this is for the benefit of everybody watching this show, what your name, Sajdah, means? That you said Minister Farrakhan gave you that name. What does that mean?
So the name means, so let me just tell you how it came about. When I first purchased the home, the former home of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, the house was so unrepresentative of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad that I was afraid to call it the Honorable Elijah Muhammad House. And so I said, we need another name until I can figure out if I can even get this to the point where it can wear his name. And so I said, well, and then I realized then people were asking me questions like, how did you do this or how did you do that? And I said, it's really just been prayer. So because Sajdah means prayer or the adoration, it's the most humblest or lowest point in our prayer movement. I said, well, let's call it Sajdah House. So I asked the minister if he thought that Sajdah was the right name for the project, because I didn't want to dare call it the Honorable Elijah Muhammad House, not yet. And then about a year after I asked him that question, he said to me, Sajdah is the right name for you and the right name for the project. So I didn't name the house after myself. My name came after the naming of the house. And the Sajdah Wendy Muhammad just kind of ties in people who knew me because I had begun through radio to brand Wendy Muhammad and in the consulting world. And now there's debate when people meet me, they say, should it be Wendy Sajdah Muhammad? Should it be Sajdah Wendy Muhammad? But I just like the rhythm of Sajdah Wendy Muhammad. And Sajdah represents that opening, that door to the new levels of success for me.
That's wonderful. Well, we've covered the past, and it appears to me that we're in the present. So while we're in the present, let's talk about what you're doing right now. And you can go into detail as far as the business development and concept that you're bringing into fruition.
Yes, so I'm still very heavily into business and real estate development. And I have a couple of companies that I own and run in that vein. One of the biggest things on that side is I help clinical people, physicians and doctors move out of the big box systems and into their own environment. And I show them how to do it. I show them how to do the build out. I show them how they should set up their patient flow. So everything from A to Z, we do that on that side of things. And then there's other real estate development. I also still run the podcast and the radio show, The Mind of an Entrepreneur. The YouTube channel is the Sajdah Wendy Muhammad YouTube channel. And from that business, we have a number of different movies and shows that we are either currently shopping or have gotten deals for that are going to be coming out soon. In addition to that, I do coaching and consulting, and probably the biggest, most notable thing is the urban historic preservation work that I just fell into with the reacquisition or the acquisition of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad House. So it's the renovation and restoration. We just got added to the National Historic Registry, which I'm really grateful about. We've spent quite a bit of time over the past 3.5 years jumping through a lot of hurdles. We're 80% complete. The house is a house museum, and I can't.
Excuse me, where is it located?
It is located at 4847 South Woodlawn Avenue, which is in historic Kenwood Hyde Park District. It is the single most important piece of property in modern day Black history. And there's a reason why, because the number of people from that era, 1952 to 1972, who are iconic in our history, visited that home. Not to mention the obvious people, the Minister Louis Farrakhan, the Malcolm X, the Muhammad Ali's. But you got people like Muhammad Ali, Judge Thurgood Marshall, Senator Adam Clayton Powell.
They all visited that home.
So the list is long. Entertainers, Sam Cooke, Wilma Rudolph, all the politicians. There's a huge ministerial alliance that was there. The Democratic Convention in 1968, I believe. Those people, don't quote me on that year. There's just a number of people, and we could just run the list. There probably isn't anybody iconic in our history from modern day times that existed during that time that did not visit that home. And so the idea is to preserve the home and make it a place where we can come and through the process of place-based education, learn not only about the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, but his impact on the world and on our community, and own and monetize our own story. And I mentioned, Brother Donald, urban historic preservation, because so much of our history during that period of the Great Migration is at risk of becoming extinct.
Absolutely.
Because not only were we obviously redlined and lived in certain areas of many urban cities around the country, those areas are now being regentrified. So those iconic people that grew up in those houses, all those historical events that took place during that time is getting written off because almost nobody knows about it. And so it's so important for us to go through our communities and purchase these homes. You could be living right next door to where Nat King Cole was born and not even know it.
Because I know the home on the corner, 48 was a 55, is what everybody in this period of time recognizes as being Minister Farrakhan's home.
Right.
But a lot of people don't know the history of what happened next door. And so when I'm in Hyde Park, and whenever I'm passing that way, I see buses from the University of Chicago, tourists that they're bringing in to show that property to. But the problem is, why isn't that ingrained and embedded in the history?
Right. Yeah, well, yes. So I would first say to you, and the minister would say, I believe, if he was here, forgive me, Brother Minister, if you wouldn't say that, but 4855 South Woodlawn is the home of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. That's his house. And he allowed his star student to live there. He built that house while he was living at 4847, where he literally built a nation off of a word from 1952 to 1972. Not only did he build a nation, he built a $75+ million economic empire from that home. The very famous story about the house at 4855 is there was another house on that property that was owned by Reverend Lou Rawls. And so I believe he's the uncle of the singer Lou Rawls.
Okay.
And he and the messenger were talking at the gate, and the messenger asked him, how much would you want for that house and that land? He gave them a price. He gave him a price. The messenger went in the house, came back with the money in a brown paper bag, handed it to him, opened the gate, and tore down the house and built what we know today as the palace for 4855 South Woodlawn. But he also built 4 houses along 49th Street going west for his children and laborers. So that corner is his corner and really should be named after him.
Did Malcolm X, when he got out of prison initially, didn't he live with the messenger?
From my understanding, a lot of people think that, but I don't believe he lived with the messenger. He did visit there and he stayed there often. And I actually know what room he stayed in, but he did not live there, as a lot of people think. Not as a permanent resident, but in terms of just being there and being frequent there. That is true.
Always I love your story and the work that you're doing, and everybody in the world's gonna know shortly, those that don't. But always, when I hear people that are successful and I see their work and God makes them successful at what they do, there always has to be, there's a yin and a yang. There's up and a down, the side and back to the front. And I always use this analogy that the Cheesecake Factory is on the bottom of the John Hancock building.
Mm-hmm.
The foundation of that building will support 100 floors.
Mm-hmm.
So it had to be structured properly in order to do that.
Sure.
And I'm sure that there were some accidents, there were mishaps, there were all kinds of things that happened along the way, but they didn't prevent this monumental structure to be finished, completed, and enjoyed.
Sure.
So I want to ask you, in your journey, what are some of the things that served to be an annoyance, a hill to climb, difficulty, the most wearisome kind of a problem that you've had, or problems that you've had in your struggle to get to where you are?
You know what? When I look back on this and say hindsight is 20/20, there's no problems. It's just about me learning what I'm supposed to do and not do. It's about me learning and using what has happened throughout my life as a way, as a compass, and as a guide. And I think the biggest challenge for me was, as I mentioned at the beginning, is learning myself and not being ashamed of who I am and representing myself. I'll give you a perfect example. We talked about my life and my work in the corporate world. And one thing about me that I always hated about myself since the time I was a little girl, since we're going back to there, was that I was really sensitive. And I would cry at the drop of the dime. people walk in a room and I could pick up different things about them, and it would get me emotional. And I felt like I couldn't control that. And I didn't like that about myself. And so I spent a number of years trying to deaden myself. But then one day, as I began studying emotional intelligence and became a certified emotional intelligence coach, I said, you know what? I said, what if this is really an attribute? So I said, there's a reason why I can sit across the table from these people and see what they don't see and hear what they don't hear. It's a reason why every time there's some big project or something that happens, I get the stuff nobody else wants. There's a reason why they could send me into Timbuktu and I'm the only person who looks like me and I'm Muhammad and I can come out successful. So I said, you know, this sensitivity that you don't like about yourself, let's turn that into an attribute. Let's start paying attention to the granular levels of detail on projects and being honored by the fact that you can see and pick up on those things. And maybe everything ain't about you. Maybe you just need to figure that out. So I would say that through that journey of figuring that out, you know, there's always the bumper cars as you're moving, but I don't look at anything as a mistake, because were it not for certain things that happen, I wouldn't be sitting here. I wouldn't be who I am. I would not have discovered. See, if you stay in a cocoon, you're not gonna find out who you are. Once you get out and get bumped and make a few mistakes and go, ooh, oh, you're gonna do that no more.
Go the other way.
Let me go this way, or this ain't the direction I'm supposed to be. So it's all a journey. Just like we're taught that God goes inside of himself. He went inside of himself, studied himself, discovered himself, and reproduced himself.
And that's us.
And that's us. So when we come into this world, you know, you and I, we're not in here by an accident, nor are any of us accidents. In fact, God said, okay, I think I want to go into the world today. It's going to look like that, sister. I'm going to express myself like this. You know, family may call him Donald or Wendy or whoever, but this is how I'm going to express myself. So it's our job to go in there and say, what was he trying to say? What did he want? What's that expression? So I don't look at anything that other people may look at and go, wow, that happened to you or that happened to you. I don't know. I care about it, but I don't. And the reason why I say that is because it's all been the making of me.
I want the audience to know this for many reasons. You said something earlier about Reverend Lou Walls.
Yes.
And how the Honorable Elijah Muhammad asked him how much he wanted for that property. And he told him, and he went in his house, not to the bank, not the Bank of America.
Mm-hmm.
He went in the house and filled up a bag and came back and paid him for that property. That's impressive. That's something that you don't hear too much of today.
Mm-hmm.
This is something that can rub off. How could we be in the position to do that? And I don't want you to answer that question right this moment, because I want to talk about you. Besides your business and besides your activity that you've had that have brought you to this point, I want the audience to know that Sister Sajdah put her money up, because sometimes we go out to try to get loans, we can get finance. So could you please tell us as much of the details about that as you possibly can?
I never thought of that in connection to what the messenger did. That's food for thought. Allah backed me into that. When I saw that I knew the home was for sale, and I knew that the family was working on getting it, and I just said, all praise due to Allah. I didn't have any desire to be involved. I just said, okay. And I subscribe, because I do real estate development, to all these sites, foreclosure.com, auction.com. There's tons of them out there. And what you do a lot of times as a realtor, when you go to these seminars, they sign you up and you have membership.
Right.
And so they send you these alerts that pop up just like this in the corner of your computer.
Okay.
And I happened to turn my computer on one day and it said 4847 South Woodlawn Avenue. And I said, you gotta be kidding me. And so I started making a series of phone calls like, hey, did y'all get it? And I was told that they had gotten it. And I thank Allah. Every time I tell this story, I have to thank Allah for my business partner who said to me, girl, you better get that house. And he's not in the nation, so he started making jokes. Y'all gonna be driving back past like, oh, the messenger used to live there. I was like, look, would you stop? Just stop. He was like, get the house, get the house. And so he kept pressing me. There was a point in the afternoon where he scrubbed out of a case and came into my office and said, did you get it? And I said, no, you don't understand. It's just a whole foray of stuff I'm not trying to jump into. And I started having like a buzzing in my head. And I thought that the stress of everything, trying to figure out what was happening and what I was going to do, I thought it was giving me a headache. And I left the office early and I went home, took a couple Tylenol and just laid down. I was like, I'm thinking about this tomorrow. Because it was so heavy that I wasn't sure that I wanted to jump into it. So then by that point, I had both my business partner and my brother, because I'd asked my brother to call and get information because I didn't even want to call. And so both of them like, what you gonna do? What you gonna do? And they just kept pressing me. And then I actually had a vision of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad in my room. And he didn't say anything. There was no conversation. I just knew at that point, this is something that I have to do. And then, and so yes, I did use my own money to purchase the home. And we got it, had 9 days to get through the closing, and we did it. And got the house. I actually was in Africa when we closed. My brother had to give him power of attorney. He came here, FaceTime me in Africa, and said, well, you sis, you got it. I don't know what you're gonna do. There's a whole bunch of raccoons up in here. and I said, all right, I'll be there. We'll get it.
Kick the coons out, right?
Yeah. That's a whole nother story. But so that's how it happened. And so I put my own money up to 3.7 million. And so now we're looking to raise the last million through the sale of coins and donations.
Let's stop right here to take a commercial break because there's something I want our audience to see of you. We're going to come back and take off right where we left off. Okay?
Yes, sir.
Sister Sajdah is doing with the restoration of the home of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad is magnificent. Something you have to see to believe. So the team and I went down there to check out the progress. And there was no way we were going to get left out. So we found a way to be a part of this historic project.
I was getting to that. So I want you to see the NFA theater, the NFA augmented reality theater. So the screen is there. I think it's 26.
Oh wow, right here?
There's 3 screens.
Wow.
26 by, I think 14. So if you can imagine with how peaceful it is here, we have ice cream socials, networking, you know, all the different things.
This is where the famous picture of Muhammad Ali shaking
Yes.
right here.
So what's going to be here is a big screen, so it'll be 3D imaging.
This is the famous room.
This is the famous Pine Room where the picture of Master Fard Muhammad was.
Yes,
Just
ma'am.
watch us step on his mask. So here's this is our, I'll show you where it's going to be.
Okay, yes, ma'am.
This is our pantry. And he used to pray down here, which we can't figure out. They said
He used to pray down here.
Yeah.
We just said that.
Yeah, he used to pray down here. When he built the palace, they said he would disappear. And they would find him here. But we learned that yesterday, but we don't know where yet. They said it was some kind of altar, but they said, Sister Jamila, Imam Sultan's mother, told me, come down here in a meditative state and I'll feel it.
I think it's in this room.
She was a little girl and she said she just remembers coming down here, seeing him with all these Qurans like on a bookshelf. And he would pray and down here.
I walked in here, I felt like I said this is a place I would
Maybe
pray.
this is it. You felt it? She felt something in here too.
Yeah, I kind of felt it.
Yeah.
Did you?
Nah, Kyrie, don't say you.
taking us on a fast tour,
Yes.
that video, but it kind of, tells about the work that you have going on.
Yes.
And you've passed that point now because it looked like it was some real construction.
Yeah, that
right
was
there.
about a year and a half ago.
Okay. So this has been a project that has been endearing for
It's a
little time.
long-term project, which I cut my teeth on in building the hospital. That took 4 years. And these kind of projects, a lot of people don't have the stamina. People run out of gas, run out of air. So this kind of stuff, it takes time. And big projects like this have their own rhythm.
Yes.
And so once you find the rhythm of the project,
Right.
then you just kind of ride it.
As opposed to saying, I'm going to finish this on May the 1st, 2025.
Yeah, because Brother Donald, what happens is when you do those kind of projects and those are done, you're not operating in the spirit and you're not operating off of the spirit of revelation. You're pushing, right? Because you're not in the present moment, you're in the future. You're trying to get there, and so you're constantly there. With a project like this, the idea is to stay as present as possible so that you can receive the divine word that really is your instruction on how to navigate this project. Why is that? It's not because you're, of being so special, but it's because you don't know what to do. This is beyond my intellectual capacity. And so in order to survive in a space that's beyond my intellectual capacity, I have to rely on something else. I can rely on you, I can rely on somebody else, I can rely on whatever, but I choose to rely on the divine revelation and let him guide me. So it's just a matter of operating outside of that sphere of our intellectual capacity.
Yes. So in terms of dollars that make sense, you've invested your personal money to the tune of about 75% of this project, or somewhere close to it.
A little close to 80%.
A little close to 80%. So the remaining 20-something% of the money to be raised to finish this project, and we'll all have a great time celebrating from then on, not just that moment, is going to happen partially through something that you've reiterated and you've given back to us from the past. And I want you to talk about that.
Yes.
The coin money.
Yes. So the inspiration behind this becoming also a repurposing and recycling project is the fact that in a conversation I was blessed to have with the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, he said to me that, and you've probably heard him say this story before, where he was walking up the driveway with the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and the Honorable Elijah Muhammad pointed to a tree. And he said, one day, when they find out who I am, they're going to rip the bark off the trees. And he went on to say there's some more to that quote, but that part of it stuck out to me. And I said, well, we claim to know who he is, so let's start ripping. Everything in here is sacred. Everything is special. So we taken old mantles and made tables out of them, old pieces of wood and made benches. And then we had all of this copper that we took off of the building that we could not reuse. And it ended up creating these commemorative coins from the copper that we could not use. So part of our fundraising effort is selling copper that still holds the energy of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And so we have them minted and graded, and we're selling them as a way to raise money. The coin, may I show?
Absolutely, show it to me.
So there's two versions of it, although this version, we made about 100 of these that are pendants. I can. About 100 of these that are pendants that we don't have very many of these left. I think there's like 7 or 8 of these left. But the majority of them are graded coins like this. And this is copper from the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's home. And this is what if you came to the believers meeting and the business meeting, those of you who are members of the Nation of Islam, you saw the minister hold that up. This coin, which is interesting, is graded. You're a coin collector, you know what grading means. It means that they graded the copper to make sure it was authentic, and they put this authentic seal on the back of it.
Okay.
You see that number there?
Yes.
So that number, if you purchase one of these coins, we're going to use this as a form of your membership number to the house. And so you'll get certain benefits. I'm a firm believer of giving more of service value than what it is that I receive. So I'm not the person that's going to say, give me money, give me money, give me money without giving you, excuse me,
That's okay.
some value. And I want to give people value. I want to give them a piece of the home. And so these graded coins are $500, and those are $350. You can get those at sajdahhouse.com. That's SAJDAHHOUSE.com. And we have other items from the house. We've got old windows that once we finish the coins, we're going to offer those for sale. So those items are things that people can have that are a piece of the property. We also have sponsorship opportunities available, different aspects of the property that are available where you can have your company name or your family name etched there that will be ingrained in the home throughout history. So I hope I answered your question.
You did.
Okay.
You did. Comprehensive.
Okay.
I like this. This is amazing. Wow.
This right here is interesting, Brother Donald, because it took me 3 months to find somebody that would do it. And that's calling around every day. Spending about 2 or 3 hours every day just calling. Reason being is because anybody will make you a coin. And not that many people are going to allow you to bring 120-year-old copper to their office and say, hey, here you go, can you melt this down? And there was a woman in Wisconsin who said to me, obviously she was the last person, but this was after 3 or so months, 3.5 months maybe. She said, I've never done this before, but I'll help you. And she's a jeweler and she runs a foundry. And because she was a smaller foundry, she allowed us to cut up the copper, bind it up, and bring it to her office. And we designed the coin. The coin has an etching of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's face on the front, along with 24 stars for the 24 scientists. In the corner there, it says, in the name of Allah. And on the back, there's a raised etched picture of the house with, in Arabic, La ilaha illallah, which means there is no God but Allah.
Wow. Let me ask you this.
Mm-hmm.
Since you have been around and in the house originally,
Mm-hmm.
is there anything outstanding? I'm sure you've learned some things outstanding that you learned just being there
Yes.
that you'd like to share with us?
So remember I told you how when I was going through my Hagar phase, I learned, because I was familiar with the energy of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. It's just like if you've ever lost a loved one or not been around, the energy of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. So it's like if you lost a loved one or something and you just can feel him. I can feel my father. He's no longer with us, but I can think of him and call him up and feel him in my heart. And so I gotten very comfortable and very accustomed to doing that with the minister. And now I believe I know to the best of my ability what the Honorable Elijah Muhammad feels like spiritually. And I could really feel them, and they're one and the same. And so that is probably the most powerful thing that I've realized. And, there's been time when I've been blessed to talk to the minister and he would answer the phone and I'm just dumbfounded. I can barely talk because it's the same energy that I felt in the house. And so when that kind of energy and you draw back on that kind of history, you start to dream, you start to have all these metaphysical things that happen to you. There's some nights when I say, okay, can I go sleep? So there's just so many. So I would say being able to be blessed, and I don't take it lightly. This is not me being a trophy and being on the shelf going, look at me, look at me. This is knowing that there's something after this, because God wastes nothing. And so I've been blessed to be connected to so many people from so many walks of life, so many different cultures. I just had a meeting on Friday with the neighbors to the north of the house, who is a group of priests. And there's a few of them, and we sat down and talked. And they're from, I forget the name of the church, I won't try to quote it. But we just sat down and talked. We talked about Jesus and the Christ and Hosanna, and having that conversation because the older priest knew the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And he said sometimes they would talk at the gate. And so I just sat there and I said, there's a blessing and I'm going to pay attention because this means something.
I heard Minister Farrakhan say this. He said that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad told him, as his student, he says, I have made friends for you all over the world.
Absolutely.
I've heard Mr. Farrakhan say, we have friends all over the world. And when we think about doing something as far as business is concerned, and we want it to be local, national, many of us don't realize that the friends that have been made are not friends with nothing. They're friends that own their lands, own their continent, own their countries. That's a little bit different than owning a corner store and a lot over here with a nice house on it.
Absolutely.
So all of that is waiting for us to be and to do the right thing. Because you can't give a world of material to a fool.
Right.
It'll choke them to death.
Right.
But when people are mature, they're ready, and we're in unity
And in submission to
in
him.
submission to God,
Mhm.
then we can make it happen.
Mhm.
And so I understand that.
Yeah.
And so I would.
His friends pop out from all over. I'll tell you one quick story. I went to the merchandise mart because I was looking for someone to replicate wallpaper. One of the things we're going to do is the first floor of the home, we're going to replicate it to the way it looked in the 60s. And so I was looking to replicate the wallpaper that was on the wall. And someone had told me that this designer was in the merchandise mart now and that I could go and talk to her. And on the way to her shop, I saw this store that had these crystal lights. And I was like, man, these are beautiful. You know, now you can't just get everything that's pretty because we have to be period conscious and all that. And so I just wandered in there. And you know, when you're going down into those stores, you get all these thick catalogs. So I was holding maybe about 6 inches of catalogs in my hands and with my purse over my arm. And I walked in and this gentleman came out. He said, can I help you? And I said, yes. I said, I'm just waiting for my appointment right here at this place. Wallpaper, blah, blah, blah. And your crystal chandeliers caught my eye. I'm looking for some period pieces. And so he says, let me get you a bag. He said, because you look really weighed down. He goes up behind the counter, comes back with a bag that had Muhammad Ali on it. Now, I didn't say,
Wow.
I didn't walk in and say, Assalamu alaikum, peace to you, but he gave me the Muhammad Ali bag. And I looked and I said, I started to ask him, but I didn't say anything. He said, so what are you doing? I said, well, I'm renovating a home, blah, blah, blah. He said, where's the house? And I said, it's 4847 South Woodlawn Avenue. He said, you know, I used to live right behind there. So he gave me all this additional history about the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And he knew Father Jim next door and all these other people. And I was like, wow. And so then he gave me suggestions. He's like, don't get these lights from here. Go to this antique place. And there's this. And so he sat there and just wrote out like how I kind of chased down some of these pieces. That was in the middle of the pandemic. It was cold outside, snowy, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna go down there and see if they're open. And so his friends just pop out. There's so many examples of that. People say, I knew that, but I didn't live it.
Right. You know, we're gonna have to, with your permission, bring you back.
Oh, yes,
We gotta
I'd be
come
happy
back.
to.
We got more story to tell, but we're making it.
Okay,
Wow, we're telling it.
okay.
So I just want to let you know that not too long from now, I want you to come back because there's some things that you mentioned that I would like to deal with more comprehensively
Yes, sir.
than the time that we have
Yes, sir.
to do what we do. Is there anything that you can think of right now that you would like to let us and our audience know besides what we
Sure. I would say for us to remember that, again, our history matters. And it's time for us to own and monetize our history. We have culture vultures everywhere. Our history makes money for every culture around the world but us. Just look at hip hop alone.
every culture on earth.
Every culture on earth. And so they've created tools that allow them to, we like to dance, we like to sing, we like to post and see ourselves. So they let us do that and they mimic it and they monetize it and make money off of it.
They
So
brand
it's
it.
time
Yeah.
and branded.
They
It's
brand it.
time for us to really wake up, finance the preservation of our own history, which is why we're selling these coins, why it makes sense that the people that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad loves and dedicated 44 years while he was with us in our presence, to saving and resurrecting, that we finance the renovation and restoration of his home. That way we can tell his story, we can tell the truth about it, and we can monetize it and do something for our community. And we stop giving away our history, because when you give it away, it changes.
And so the people that are riding by in buses and limousines in Hyde Park, who that happens to be the focal point of Hyde Park,
You're going to be able to go to a website very soon. You're going to be able to sign up to get a virtual tour or an in-person tour and other events and things that we're going to have there. We're going to roll that out relatively soon.
and this is going to be for all people.
Everybody, all people. We want to tell the world who this man is and depart from the media depiction, which is so limited and so negative and so non-inspirational.
Exactly. I think we've come to a fork right now, and we're going to pick it up and get something to eat with it
Oh,
later.
okay.
But I want to, as I said, continue
Yes,
with
sir.
this with a part two.
Yes,
Because
sir.
you're
Thank you.
still
Thank you for
evolving.
having me.
Oh, you're so
Thank you,
welcome.
Reverend Franklin D.
You're welcome.
Morris. I appreciate you. Thank you, Sister Pamela. Thank you very much. And thank you to you.
You're welcome. We will be back. Ladies and gentlemen, we thank you today for listening to WVTC Radio with Sajdah Muhammad. She's very inspirational to us, and we are definitely going to have her back, as you just heard me ask. But until then, and until next week, in fact, until this coming Wednesday at 6:00 p.m. Chicago time, be blessed. Tune in, and let's keep our message moving forward. May God bless you, and have a great day.
Views made on the preceding program are not those of WVTC Radio, iNetworks Communications, or their financial supporters.